Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. Happy Monday morning if you're listening. Happy Sunday if you are watching. Lots of spring games to digest, Ari, but I think we need to start in a snowy Boulder, Colorado, where there was a big crowd at Folsom Field and basically a practice. I mean, they broke into 7-on-7 after some 11-on-11 stuff pretty quick there at Colorado, but people were jacked to see Deion Sanders in a cowboy hat coaching football.
So what's to you the most pertinent thing to discuss from that? Is it the turnout and the
crowd
enthusiasm, or anything you saw on the screen?
The enthusiasm, because what I saw on the field was a roster that is going to have some problems when they play like a Washington or a USC or an Oregon.
Yeah. Okay, so you told me before the show that you had a take about Colorado football. First off, if you didn't see the Colorado spring game, would you say it was 75%, 80% full, the stadium?
Yes, and it was snowing and in the 30s. So let's not forget that. So it was cold.
It's almost like you just look at that alone, and it's like Deion's going to be there for a long time. You know, if it's not him leaving
unless he's
voluntarily.
Great, then right,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but it's just like I mean, I'm sure there's other coaches that could have done that turnaround in terms of getting people.
I'm not. Who else can you hire other than maybe Nick Saban or Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly?
I think that you could make the actual case that Colorado's enthusiasm by percentage point increased higher than USC's did when they got Lincoln.
I would agree with that. Because USC was already excited about football. Like, even though they were not happy with the way the Clay Helton era ended, it's still a fan base that loves the team, that loves football. Colorado was dead in terms of enthusiasm. There was nothing there.
Well, I was texting Dave Ubben, who I really, really envy because he's going to be like our quasi-Colorado guy who gets to go to Boulder every 3 weeks.
Seriously, I hope there's direct flights between Knoxville and...
I mean, honestly, though, like, we're going to have a discussion off the air, and I'm going to broach it on the air, but I don't know who created this arrangement for him, but I'm kind of salty about it. And I kind of think
he did it for himself because he's smart.
Well, no, listen, I have a thought, and I told him this, but remember when we were in Vegas for our shows?
Mm-hmm.
And our editor called us and said, "Hey, Ari, do you want to go to Boulder today?" And I couldn't because of the Vegas shows.
You blew it.
I blew it. Could I have like had that gig?
Yes.
I'm closer than he is.
Like when someone meets you, they love you. So you would have been in there. You would have been in all the videos.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but I'm happy for Dave. He's a tremendous reporter and does great work. And if you didn't read his stories from their spring game, multiple stories, including the 98-year-old fan, he did a pretty in-depth dive on.
She was in great shape for 98.
She's in better shape than I am. I'm not for anybody.
Incredible.
But yeah, complete comprehensive coverage from him. Good job. I'm just a little jealous and salty about it. But we had some discussions about Colorado.
Yeah.
And do you want to do your take first, or do you want me to start downloading my rapid fire take?
I think people have figured out what my take is. They succeeded already with this hire because people are excited about a program that no one was excited about before.
Yeah, like it almost feels like house money, right?
Yeah, this is the entertainment business. You got people to show up. No one was showing up. And again, I just named a few. Name me the coaches that you could have hired realistically at Colorado, because Nick Saban wouldn't have come.
Not realistically.
There is no one Colorado could have realistically hired who would have generated anything close to that response.
And I wonder how many programs or athletic directors are like kicking themselves of like, we blew it, or like we were late to the party, or we should have seen this coming.
Well, here's the thing. I think if you're like Auburn, it's not the same thing, because
you don't need the same thing if you're Auburn, though.
Right. As long as you win, it's a packed house. They love you.
Yeah.
They're donating
money.
But
how many programs were on the verge of dead, or were on their deathbeds that could have used this bump?
I mean, Colorado was the one that needed it the most. Arizona State, you can say maybe them, but I think Kenny Dillingham's a good fit there. Would there have been more people
I also still think
at
that
Sun Devil
Arizona
Stadium
State,
with Dion Sanders?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Arizona State is wounded and injured. I don't know if they were as close to dead as Colorado.
Right.
Like he brought them back from life. So, okay. Dave sent me this text last night, and I want to know what your thought process is. He said, I would love to see what Deion Sanders would do at a program that doesn't have a ceiling, which is an implication that he believes that Colorado does. Facilities, location, all the things that Colorado traditionally has working against it, Deion would have to overcome. And I was thinking about it, and I think I agree with him. But let's just say everything comes up Deion for the next 3 or 4 years. Like, if everything goes perfectly for this man, could he raise Colorado to a point where the ceiling that we perceive exists today is no longer there?
He can raise the ceiling. He can't eliminate the ceiling.
Like, do you think that if he was there for 20 years, he could win a national title there in year 15 or 20?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. At that long, yes, I think you can do. Clemson's a good example of that. Clemson
was always a good program, though.
It was always a good program, always had a very passionate, devoted fan base, always acted like an SEC school, even if it wasn't in the SEC. So, but it was historically mediocre. I mean, between that national title in 1981 and when they became a power again, they were pretty mid.
But it's like even things like their stadium holds 50,000 people, and it's kind of an older needs renovations type stadium. Like, I'm just like saying, like, just normal things that you would expect from a powerhouse program. Like, could Deion be the catalyst that fixes everything and makes Colorado a hotbed? Or will it always be, holy crap, look what Deion did, despite the fact that he's at Colorado?
I think if you're there long enough and you're winning, you can build into whatever you need to. I just think if you win there are going to be so many people throwing jobs at you that you're going to take one of the ones that doesn't have that kind of ceiling on it.
Yeah. Because, like, I mean, I guess, like, Colorado could be a life calling. Like, because to me, I was thinking Deion has it really made right now because he's at a place that you could conceivably recruit to. It's a Power 5, at the moment job. It's in a beautiful location, and he has a runway that he probably would not have in terms of being stuck with at 90% of other places because they were in dire need of him.
This also means you have time because, again, if you watch the spring game, you're looking at it and going, so I'm looking at their schedule now. TCU, Nebraska, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Oregon State, Utah. Like, these are teams that roster's going to struggle a lot with.
Yeah.
See, because they're probably not physically big enough to play with a lot of those teams. I think some of the skill talent they've brought in is going to be very helpful, but they've got to get better on both lines of scrimmage. It's not going to be as quick of a turnaround as Jackson State was. So he's going to need time. Yeah.
So, but he gets that time because it's like, I think he would need that time everywhere, but I don't know if every program that could have hired him would have been as understanding of it as Colorado will be. Like, I think as long as Colorado has fan buy-in and people paying attention and talking about them, that's like ahead of the curve of what they were ever going to be anyway. So they can sustain more 6 or 7 lost seasons in the future than
this is what
otherwise.
I say about programs though that kind of need the pub. When they hire a boring coach, why did you do that? Yeah. That's the stupidest thing you can do.
Because even if you're going to stink, you might as well make more money while you're doing it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I don't know that I would take I think the over-under on their season win total is like 6 or something, or isn't it even 5.5 or something like that?
Under.
I think it might be under. So I didn't watch that game, but I have one on the field related thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me, and I texted you about it yesterday, Andy, when Deion Sanders said that Travis Hunter could be a top 5 pick at corner or receiver. And of course, you mentioned a person that I should have just come straight to my mind, in Charles Woodson as an example of that. But is Travis Hunter a legitimate Heisman? Like, everybody was talking about Shedeur. But, like, could Travis Hunter, like, if he was just a badass lockdown corner who scores 10 touchdowns, but also has, like, 4 picks and a pick 6 and a punt return or whatever it is that he does, like, and Colorado is one of the more entertaining teams to watch for whatever reason, like, could he overcome 5, 6, 7 losses and win a Heisman there, or do you have to be good?
You've got to be like an all-American corner and the best receiver on the team, like the leading receiver on the team, which is hard to do. But that would probably help. I mean, there's just not been a lot of legitimate two-way players. Who was it?
Chris Gamble at Ohio State was a two-way player during the 2002 season.
Stanford had one during the Harbaugh era.
Yeah.
Owen Marisic, a linebacker, fullback. Last year, Jack Coletto at Oregon State was a two-way player, but it was more of a package player on offense. So I think you would, to do that for a program that is not going to be good, or like a conference title contender type program, you would have to be first team All-America corner and the leading receiver.
Which possible?
There, yeah, possible. It really can you do it physically? It's just
so let me ask you this: if you were the
body,
the bookmaker, who has better odds to win the Heisman next year, Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter?
Neither. The field.
If you had to pick between those two, who has better odds?
I'd pick Travis Hunter because he's going to be the more interesting story.
Because I think
story matters. I think story matters a lot in the Heisman.
Yeah, Shedeur Sanders is, then has the name on his jersey, but Travis Hunter is Mr. Dion.
Let's be honest. Is Shedeur Sanders going to put up the best numbers even in the Pac-12 for any quarterback? You're in the same league with Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. and Caleb Williams. They're going to put up massive numbers. Yeah.
Also, too, you'd have to. I think that winning is more emphasis on the quarterback position in that discussion than it would be at non-quarterback positions. So, if you were going to be a 500 team or a team that's below 500 and going to New York, I don't think you could be the quarterback of that team. So,
because
everybody was
why
talking.
Didn't you win more?
If you go look at preseason Heisman dark horses or whatever, Shedeur Sanders is number one on every single one of those lists. And I think it's interesting that in year one of Deion Sanders' era, he's not even the best candidate on his own team.
Carson Beck on those lists?
He should be high.
Go bet on Carson Beck, everybody.
Yeah.
He's about Colorado. He's probably going to New York. So
I know Hunter caught a touchdown that I could have caught. Do you think you and I could have made that play if we both were on?
I'd pretty open.
I'd have to be the one throwing it, I think. But he is legitimately amazing. And he was the one that took the leap of faith to go to Jackson State. And I think you absorb, like you said, that story. Mm-hmm. If it correlates with being a dominant player on both sides of the ball in a Power 5 conference, then what if Colorado's a lot better than we think they're going to be? I don't know if our eyes.
Oh, if they're better, remember what I said about the story aspect of it? That just increases that. And I think I tweeted this on Saturday. They need to let him wear the gray uniform every game. Like Colorado should wear white or black jerseys, and then he wears the gray like the libero in volleyball.
Is that against the
playing
rules?
Everywhere. Yes, it's against the rules.
That's too bad.
But it's a great idea.
So that one to me was interesting, but I am very curious to see what Hunter can do. I don't know that I don't think that Colorado has enough dudes on its team to be a very good football team this year. And I'm very curious to see how Deion's going to handle it when they don't win.
Especially in a Pac-12 that is deeper, I think, that it's been in 10 years. I mean, this is right. It's a deep league. This is Washington is good. Oregon is good. USC is good. Utah is still very, very good. Oregon State is really good. There's lot
really good coaches too.
Yes. So this is going to be hard for them. But listen, if they are close to bowl eligibility, I'm all in, because this is as tough as that league's going to get for them.
Right.
And if they keep getting better, they're in really good shape. So, but I'm telling you, I turned the thing on. I was watching some of the Nebraska spring game, and I flipped to Colorado just as it started. And that sweeping shot of Folsom Field, snow falling, everybody in the stands going nuts. I was like, they've already won. Doesn't matter what happens this year. They've already won.
Yes. That's funny. But true, and that's also the entire reason why he was probably should have been more marketable of a candidate for a lot of places than he actually was.
I think people overthink this.
And I'm going to steal this too from Dave Ubben, because we were just texting about this late last night. Deion Sanders, head coach of Florida State, as Florida State goes into the SEC in 2029. Who says no?
Oh man, you're stirring the ACC pot and all of that.
It's a podcast.
Who says no? Mike Norvell maybe, but other than that, I think everybody's pretty happy. Everybody's okay with that. No, Mike Norvell's doing a real good job. I don't know if you saw any of their spring game yesterday, but that program is feeling very stable and secure right now, which is not something you would have said about Florida State 2-3 years ago.
Yes. I'm excited to see how it all pans out for sure.
Yeah. So the Dion thing, again, you're in the entertainment business. You hire a coach to get people excited. No one gets people more excited than Deion Sanders. There you go. Maybe Nick Saban, because I believe Alabama had, I think Bryant Denny was at 100,000 capacity his first year. Whatever it is, they were turning people away for their spring game when Saban got there. But other
if
than
Saban
that,
were the head coach at Colorado, though, it would have been sold out, right?
Oh yeah, same thing. Yeah. So exactly. But there's just not that many people. There's even really good coaches, accomplished coaches, that if you hire, like, let's say Ryan Day had said, screw this Ohio State stuff, I'm going to coach Colorado.
Nope.
That crowd wouldn't have been there yesterday. It's nothing against Ryan Day. He just doesn't light the fire like Dion does.
Yeah. And Dion, too, just like was walking around doing interviews, yelling at the sideline to make a play while he was doing interviews. Like, I don't know very many coaches who do that. It's just going to be a different experience. And I think the fact that Dion is a great personality and is different than most people that have been in his position is one thing, but the way that he approaches the entertainment factor of it, I think that like nobody understands that it's an entertainment product more than he does.
Do you want your own We Comin' hooded jacket? Because that's like that line of Dion clothing I'm here for. Do you know how much of that stuff you could sell right now?
That's true. I am super curious, Andy, if they stink in year 2 or 3, what it's going to look like, though.
Well, then it goes away. But you know what?
Yeah.
All the other people they could have hired, it would have been gone already.
Yeah. Well, the thing I want to know, though, is just like how also, too, like the content machine. Mm-hmm. Like everything's live on YouTube. Anything, you can get whatever you want. The hoodies and the screaming on the sidelines. I ain't hard to find, all that stuff. Like, very curious what losing Dion looks like.
Oh, it may change. I mean, you notice Jim Harbaugh adjusted his strategy for a while they weren't beating Ohio State and
stopped climbing trees, and he stopped doing satellite camps and all that
went
stuff.
Away. Yeah. So I think and I think Dion's going to have to deal with that this year. It's not going to be winning right away like at Jackson State, probably. It probably will take a little while to get it going. But I do have faith in him to get a really deep roster there within a few years, and they will be competitive in whatever league they're in, whatever their league looks like.
And by the time that happens, USC and UCLA will be gone.
Or they'll be gone. Colorado. Like,
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. That's why I said whatever their league looks like, whether it's a new version of the Pac-12, whether it's if they go to the Big 12, they will have a deep and competitive roster within a few years. He's going to be able to do that. Whether it becomes a dominant program in its league, that's the next step. That's what he has to prove. And we'll see if he can. It's going to be fun to watch, though, because you couldn't take your eyes off that deal on Saturday, and it was just a practice. Like, it wasn't even a spring scrimmage, really.
Not a game. Yeah. Not a game. Practice.
That's right. Thank you, Allen Iverson. When we come back, though, we'll talk about another spring game that looked a little bit different in terms of rosters. Alabama searching for a starting quarterback. You saw 2 potential starters going at it. You saw some young guys coming in. What did we learn? We'll talk about it when we come back.
Do your financial goals feel out of reach? They don't have to be. With Chime Secured Credit Builder Visa Credit Card, you can start building credit with your own money through on-time payments and small everyday purchases like groceries, streaming, and gas. Members see an increase of 30 points to their credit scores on average. Chime reports your payments to the major credit bureaus and help you build credit over time, all with no annual fees, large security deposits, or credit checks to apply. Start making your financial dreams a reality with Chime. Signing up only takes 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/Andy. That's chime.com/Andy. The Chime Credit Builder Visa Card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. pursuant to a license from Visa USA. Chime checking account and $200 qualifying deposit required to apply for secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Based on a study conducted by Experian Credit Builder members, observed an average of 30-point FICO score increase after 8 months with regular on-time payments. Results may vary. See Chime.com for details. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply except at MoneyPass ATMs in a 7-Eleven or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. That's Chime.com/Andy. Get started. Takes 2 minutes. Chime.com/Andy.
Welcome back. So, Alabama held a spring game. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, we got to see them play quite a bit. My takeaway of watching the two guys that are clearly battling it out for the starting job, Alabama's defense is going to be really good.
Yeah.
They did not
Defensive
get much
line,
time
too,
to throw. Yeah.
And takes on offense, which is what we're here for.
I don't know. I don't know. I see. This is the thing, and this goes back to what we were talking about last week, where you can set your spring game up to be whatever you want it to be.
Right.
And I said, if you want to get the fans off your back, just let your QBs throw a bunch of touchdowns, let your defense be very vanilla. But in Nick Saban's case, he doesn't need that. Like, he's the greatest of all time. The fans love him. That's not even a question. You want to challenge these guys and see who rises to the challenge. And boy, did they try to challenge them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, also too, because that's going to be the difference maker, we think, of whether or not Alabama's in the playoff, right? Like, I mean, if they find the right quarterback,
right.
They've got a new offensive coordinator, their offensive line. Do they going to have a receiver step up and be what they need him to be? After that was an issue last year, and you got to replace Jahmyr Gibbs. There's a lot of question marks on that side of the ball. And, I'm usually the person that's just like, well, when you sign 15 top 100 players a year, you'll just figure it out. But I do think that it's worthy of a discussion because, like, I don't know. Like, let's just say Alabama loses 3 games this year. Like, are you worried about the dynasty then?
Well, I think at that point, you can say they'd been surpassed, assuming Georgia does what we think they're going to do, and LSU is the other team that beats them. And then I guess there would be one other one in there. Maybe, well, if they lost 3, they don't even get to Georgia. So that would be very interesting. But
yeah.
I mean, at that point, then you start wondering, is this going to come back? I don't know. I don't know how many people are going to be able to score very much on that defense to make that happen. And I know Tennessee put 52 on them last year. I know that, but they got a chance of being very good on that side of the ball. And the offense, I mean, not being able to block those guys, I don't know how much that tells me.
Andy, I want to ask you a pointed question right now because it's a podcast and it's entertainment.
That's right. We're in the entertainment business. Sorry. Hold on.
Right now.
Oh, God.
Gun to the head.
Oh, no.
Truth serum.
Oh, boy.
Who wins the Texas-Alabama game?
Alabama.
Yeah.
I was going to do my podcast. Ask me something harder than that.
I'm not sure. I'm 100% sure about that.
I feel good about that. If it were in Austin, maybe I wouldn't feel as good. I feel pretty good about that game in Bryant-Denny.
I'm not going to say anything. I can't do it.
Oh,
I am convinced that Texas is going to be good this year.
Oh, no. The burnt orange Kool-Aid is coursing through your veins.
I am convinced. I'm convinced. And against my better judgment. They stink. Okay? I just wrote a column that they've stunk.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people got angry at me about a Texas fan last year. Last week?
Yeah, why were the Texas fans mad at you? You were just telling
I wrote a column about Texas. Yeah, well, people don't like the truth, even if it's math based.
They should like that. They should like that because it tells you what's been going on and what needs to be fixed.
Right. And I think
they complain about that on their own message boards. Maybe that's one of those cases of
you can't.
We're allowed to say it, but you can't. Yeah.
Right. But also too, like the timing of it was kind of. It wasn't intentional. The timing was weird because it came after we found the information. It wasn't because I wanted to rain on their parade, But the statistic that Bijan's going to be the first rounder since Vince Young in 2006 is like a staggering statistic that like I cannot fathom being true.
First offensive first rounder.
Offensive first rounder. Yes.
It's not besmirched
but first
offensive tackle Malcolm Brown. Okay.
But I think that like that game last year was close, and I get that it was in Austin. but I wouldn't have given Texas a shot in a million years.
I mean,
I still think Alabama's going to
played
win
a
this
bad
year.
game in that game. Yeah,
I think Alabama's going to win this year. It could be a tough game, Andy. Like if Texas's offense is awesome, like we think it's going to be, and they score 38 points, 34 points. And
it's not even if Alabama's defense is good, if you're playing against a very high-powered offense, as we saw last year. Alabama's defense was good against most opponents, but against Tennessee's, they gave up 52. So
this year, would you take the best defense or the best offense? If you like knew you could have one or the other one.
Best offense.
The best offense tends to win. Like even in these playoff games, the teams that have great defenses still give up 31 points, 38 points.
Right. You need a serviceable defense, which is why Georgia beat Ohio State. Like Georgia had a serviceable defense that still got torched. But Ohio State had a bad for that level of team defense, and they got torched more.
And they lost at the end despite having the best offense, potentially.
Right.
People think it was the best offense. I think that there was some question about whether it actually was. It's like most exciting and most aerial attack is what we like to watch, but I don't know if that makes you the best. Because if you go look at Ohio State's offensive numbers in the biggest games the last few years, that's not really as impressive as you think.
Yeah, I want the team that can throw when it needs to throw and run when it needs to run. And
yes,
like George is actually probably the better version of that, the more balanced version of we'll do whatever we need to do to beat you.
Yeah. And I think Ohio State's trying to get back to that, but I don't know. Like, I think we're going to know pretty early on in the year what Alabama is. And I think it obviously starts with who you think the quarterback should be or who they think the quarterback should be. And I think that both of us agree that the two that it's between aren't the best looking on Saturday.
So there was the Tyler Van Dyke rumor, and then it doesn't sound like Van Dyke's moving from Miami. It sounded like that got squared away. And
didn't Miami's official Twitter account post a picture of him over the weekend and saying like, I love Coral Gables or something?
Yeah. Well, who doesn't love Coral Gables? Let's be honest.
And I don't know who doesn't.
But so I think it's going to be somebody on their roster. And Saban got the question about, do you want to, would you consider taking someone? He left the door wide open. Like if somebody wants to come on. I'm not sure who that quarterback would be if that would happen.
Are we sure that Tyler Van Dyke is an upgrade from those two anyway?
I think it's going to be Milroe after watching. That's who I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Milroe. The quarterback that I was most impressed watching, but again, because you can make a spring game look and be whatever you want it to be. I like Dylan Lonergan, the freshman. I thought he looked very poised in there. Obviously, they're sending a different challenge at Milroe and Simpson than they were sending at Dylan Lonergan and Eli Holston. Yeah.
This is a podcast, right?
It's
Alabama
a podcast.
Starting quarterback Malik
You're
Murphy.
In a safe space. I think. Do we have so for those who are listening and not watching, Ari ducked below the desk again. Is it? Are you only going to duck below the desk when you say things about Texas?
Yes.
Is that how this is going to work from now on?
Yeah. Whenever I say anything that's remotely Texas related, I think I'm going to duck under the desk. But I also too I could watch Malik Murphy on Sat or when Texas had their spring game and be like, that guy could start next year somewhere.
But okay, well, let's have the Malik Murphy conversation again. But let me throw another name at you. Because we're talking Malik Murphy, where the SEC teams would try to take him because he's not in an SEC program right now, although Texas will be a year from now. The non-SEC teams, would they do the same thing to get Garrett Nussmeier from LSU? Because he looked good again. He looked good when they put him in the SEC championship game.
But
now,
it
Walker Howard's
back down to this. It just boils down to the same thing always, Andy. It's like, how much stock can you put into this one thing that's on television? And it's like, do you think that you can identify a starting caliber player by watching him in a spring game?
No, you absolutely can't.
So it's like
I
we
was
get carried
joking
away
completely. I texted Ari on Saturday, completely joking. I was like, I've watched 4 series with 4 different quarterbacks, and I've decided that Dylan Lonergan should start for Alabama.
But the fact that you watched those series and you saw his arm makes you think like, hey, this guy's got something, and it might not be like, I totally think, here's my philosophy on college football for real. If somebody is going to be special, 9 times out of 10, you can tell immediately. Like in my experience covering a team that had a lot of really talented players in there, the people who wound up being Heisman finalists and first-round draft picks, 9 out of 10 times, were great the second they stepped on the field. It might have had growing pains, but they had special moments that you're like, holy crap, that guy gets it, or that guy has it. And I think you can do that at the quarterback position a little bit. Now, he's a freshman. He should be going to the prom, all that stuff. But like, I do think that like I would, you know how I am with starting freshmen.
I would accelerate his development to see if it's possible for him to be my backup this year. And then in camp, if he keeps doing it, listen, you're Alabama. You're going to roll your helmets out there and beat most of the teams you play. If you decide in the middle of the year that maybe it's not, because we've seen this before. We saw this in 2016 where they started Blake Barnett against USC, and then they inserted Jalen Hurts, and that was all she wrote. Jalen Hurts was started for the rest of the year. We saw in 2015, they started Jake Coker. They weren't sure. They start Cooper Bateman at the beginning of that Ole Miss game, and then they realized, oh, nope, Jake Coker's the guy. So it's not like they haven't done that in the past. So maybe that's what happens. Maybe somebody winds up the starter. I again, just reading tea leaves and watching it look like Milroe to me. But if he's the starter, but you think Ty Simpson or Dylan Lonergan, like you think there's a chance that that's the person you might want later, you can work them in. It's not that you've got the Texas game there, but you've also got a game in Tampa at USF that you can work with. So like they've got a possibility where they don't have to be just completely, to use one of your phrases, pot committed.
Well, the thing too about like, the Texas Alabama discussion is that like last year it would have been a disappointment for Texas if they would have gotten blown off the field by Alabama, right? I think the expectation from Texas fans are to have a very similar game with a chance to win like they had last year. And with Alabama, them losing that game, I think would be really, really tough look for them as they're because this is supposed to be a year where they get back a little bit, and if you're going,
it would be damaging. Now you've got.
When's the last time we had a discussion like this about Alabama in April?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since we had any doubts about them going into a season at all. So it's interesting that we're here. And yeah, I looked at LSU. I don't think Nussmeier's going anywhere. So they've got Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier, who both of them feel like they could be very good, serviceable. Well, we saw Jaden Daniels lead them to an SEC West title. I think Nussmeier could take that team equally far. So that's the deal. I said this, I had this argument with somebody about who do we think that the media will pick to win the SEC West at SEC Media Days. And I said it may be LSU, and I don't even remember who it was. They were like, no, there's no way. It'll definitely be Alabama.
It was me.
I think it may be. Oh, it was you. Okay.
Yeah,
it'll be LSU. I'm telling you right now.
Somebody else agreed with me too. So right now I'm looking at the 2020. What year is it? 2023.
Yeah.
National championship odds, and Georgia's plus 225. Alabama is second, plus 500, 5-1, and Ohio State is 6-1. So they still have the second best odds to win the national title this year.
Yeah.
And now part of that too is perception and whatever, but like, it's not like we're talking about a team that stinks. We're talking about a team of whether or not it's going to lose 2 games or not.
Yeah. And using your one of your favorite stats, the talent composite, I believe they're still going to be number 1. I don't think the new talent composite has come out, but I believe they'll still be number 1.
I don't know if it's for sure, but that's who I would guess it would be.
So yeah, I am not going to predict the demise of the Alabama dynasty until I see it happen. I'm just not doing that. But
I'm just never going to predict it. I'm just going to analyze it when it does. Like, I got a lot of flack though, Andy. Like, Georgia fans like lit me up when I said, when we had the argument on the pod about how I said Alabama's still the best program in college football. Like, that to me, like, was a big sticking point in Athens, and of course, rightfully so. They're back-to-back national champions. But if Alabama turns around and goes 9-3 this year, then it's like, oh boy,
we'll have a very
I'm
different
kind of
conversation
banking on them being very,
Yeah.
very good again this year. So, yeah, but this is also too. It's just like, well, do we trust that Nick Saban's going to be able to figure it out I don't know that he's
Yeah.
given us much reason in the past
I think he's
to make you
earned
think
that
he will.
trust.
So
Yeah,
right.
I think he has. So, any other spring games stick out to you? I watched some Nebraska. I loved what Matt Rule did, where they ran the fullback dive the first play and they handed the ball to Frank Solich on the sideline. Like that doesn't win you any games, but that does win you some hearts right off the bat. Which that relationship needed to be mended anyway. Frank Solich.
I mean, I just come out running the
Nebraska.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
I thought you were talking about the play they ran, but yeah, we can get into Frank Solich a little bit because he went out and had a really, really good career at Ohio after. I mean, he's a good coach for sure.
He was a very good coach, and that, you know, we always look at where a program started to fall. That move was where Nebraska started to fall. Now they had some good years under Bo Pelini, but they never did reach the same kind of heights again. So I thought it's an important mending of fences. Now that doesn't win you any games. The question is, can Matt Rule make Nebraska win games? This goes back to the conversation we were having about Dion. You didn't need to hire Dion to fill Memorial Stadium at Nebraska. They had 60,000 people there on a very cold day. They would have, no matter who you would hire, because it's Nebraska. The question is, can Matt Rule get that done? I when you have 6 quarterbacks, you can make them all live in the spring game. That was interesting to watch. Like Jeff Sims, there was a play where the blocking, it was a 3rd and short. The blocking completely breaks down. It's a sure sack. I'm waiting for the whistle because I've watched enough spring games to know that if somebody gets within 2 inches of the quarterback, they blow the whistle. And then I forget, he's live. And he just runs for like 8 yards. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's nice to be able to see what this would have looked like in a real game, because I think that probably helps Jeff Sims in that quarterback competition to have them know that that's something he's capable of.
Right. So, Andy, you read 3-Star U, the story that I did with Dave and Mitch last week?
Yes.
Well, if you haven't read it, listeners, please go read it. We put a lot of time into it. But anyway, so basically we just figured out which teams are best and worst at developing 3, 4, and 5-star prospects on a percentage basis, not total numbers. And Nebraska was by far the worst at developing 4-star prospects. And when I say that, between the classes of 2009 and 2019, they signed 67 4-star prospects. Off the top of your head, Andy, how many of those got drafted? Do you remember? Just drafted.
Percentage was how many? What's the total that they signed?
67.
67. Okay, so I'm going to say that 5 of them got drafted.
3.
Oh man, it was worse than
3. So like I look at, because the thing that is so interesting to me about Nebraska is that even though they've been so terrible on the field, the recruiting classes that they've brought in have all been, for the most part, top 25 classes, which means that Nebraska, to a certain extent, can recruit a roster that's pretty good in comparison to its peers. If maybe top 30% of the Big Ten at the very least. And they've been so terrible as it pertains to attrition and development over the course of the past, 10 years or so, that it's made them impossible for them to put out a completed product. So when I look at that information, it makes me think, well, if Matt Rule can be a better evaluator, because because Nebraska was signing top 25 players doesn't mean they were the right fit.
Hassan Reddick's or actually a low 4-star version of Hassan Reddick, because I believe Hassan Reddick was a 0-star.
Yeah, so I think that if Matt Rule can sign the same exact type of classes that Nebraska was already signing, but they just be better evaluated, fits, personalities, character, all that stuff. They stick around into the program and they actually develop these guys. Like, there is a clear path to me for Nebraska being a pretty good football program. Like, if you're a Nebraska fan and you read that story, you might put your hand in your face and just go, "Oh my God, I cannot believe it's been that bad." But I also think there is an aspect of that of, well, at least that explains what went wrong, and here's how we can fix it. So, the fact that they have Matt Rule here, who's the model of functionality,
who did it at Temple and did it at Baylor. Yes.
Nebraska has been the example of dysfunction. So if you go get a guy who seems to be the opposite of that. He's not the flashiest dudes in the world. He's not going to go out recruit Alabama, but what he could do is sign top 20 classes with players who fit his system, keep them in the program, and actually like develop these guys. There's absolutely no reason why Nebraska can't be a 10-2 team. There's none. So I'm not saying year one or even year two, but add into the fact that Nebraska also is going to be a very attractive place in the transfer portal moving forward. And Matt Rule has name recognizability. Like, it might not be the heartthrob, Scott Frost coming home to save the program that he won a national championship with. But this is probably a more functional and good hire, I'll say. Like, when it comes to, Scott Frost was a home run. When they hired him, there wasn't a single person, myself included, that would have criticized that. But when I'm looking at this now, based on what I know with how that went, like, this is the route that I feel like Nebraska had to take. Find competence, reliance, and functionality, and you have a coach that can make that team a 10-win team.
Yeah. And the thing is, this might just be a case of them figuring out what actually works best for Nebraska now. Because
keeping them there. Yes.
Yeah. The idea of trying to hire someone who, and they've gone through various versions of this, of we got to hire this type of person. We got to hire this type of person. They needed to hire a developer. They really needed
That's a really good point what developer. You said. Go back. Yeah. I interrupted you by misunderstanding you, and I want you to say it again. Nebraska had to hire somebody that understands and who fits what they are now, and not somebody who's trying to make them what they were in the 90s.
Exactly, because you're not going to, because the world has changed. But if you have an accomplished developer, because you think about the level of recruiting class they've been able to get, where you're talking about kind of low top 25, someone who can develop those guys, someone who's a superior developer of talent with that base to start from,
is a 10-2 team.
Is a top 15 program in the country. Is
right.
It's
I
possible.
agree with you.
It's doable.
Like, yeah, it's like we always talk about too, of when it comes to Nebraska and their failures and what went wrong in the last 25 years. We always talk about their geography and how hard it is to get to Lincoln on official visits and how there aren't a lot of players in Nebraska. Like, all that's true. But in spite of all that, even in the face of dysfunction, that team is still routinely signed pretty good recruiting classes. So bring in a guy who's stable, who you can trust, who's done it at multiple places, who signs I'm not even asking him to sign better classes. I'm asking him to sign the same ranking type classes with better fits. The ranking may go down a little bit because, and I've seen this with, it's not just Nebraska. I've seen this at multiple schools where you see the coach kind of chase some recruiting stars a little bit just to goose the ranking. And that never works because you get people who don't fit, or you don't have the right class balance, or your position balance is all off. That doesn't help you. Get what works for what you do. And I think that is what Matt Rule probably will do, because that's what he's done in two other places, and it worked both times. Yep. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to hype them up and saying they're going to win a national championship in a few years. No. And I don't want people to misunderstand me, but I do think that Nebraska, there might have been a sense of hopelessness. Like, if Scott Frost can't do it, no one can. And I think that might have been wrong. I don't think they're hopeless at all. Competitiveness
in the Big Ten is the goal, and it's possible. It's not impossible to be competitive in the Big Ten. Right. Exactly.
They could do that.
And I don't care that the divisions are going away. They're still going to be able to be competitive. Like, Wisconsin is changing strategies to try to stay competitive in a divisionless Big Ten. Nebraska can do that too. Rule's pretty smart. He knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And if he can do what he did at Baylor, which he was on the show last week, and I think if you read between the lines what he said, that Baylor was a harder job when he took it than Nebraska is right now. I don't even know if it's reading between the lines. I think he pretty much came out and said that. I think it's doable.
You believe that?
So, yeah, because of how awful the scandal was.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, of course, yeah, that's unprecedented.
That roster was in such a bad place.
Sorry, I was thinking about it in terms of Baylor, the job now, but now looking back.
Oh no, Baylor's a good job because Matt Rule helped make it one again. So. Yeah, but that's
I would say that Nebraska's a harder job than Baylor is now.
Yes, correct. I would agree with that. Yeah. So we'll stay in the Big Ten, though. This is not a spring game situation. This is just an update on something in the podcast that we've decided is very important for the 2023 season. That is the drive for 325. For those who don't know, Iowa offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz had his contract reworked, and basically they've got to win at least 6 games. They've got to average at least 25 points a game, or his contract terminates. It is a loser leaves town match with your job, essentially. Well, our own Scott Dochterman at The Athletic asked Brian Ferentz during a press conference last week, is that going to change how you call things? And here's what Brian Ferentz said.
24-10 against Wisconsin, 30 seconds left in the game. Will Iowa approach anything differently as far as kick a field goal, or is it, hey, we'll continue to take the knees and take the 14?
That's probably a better question for the head coach.
Okay.
I'm not interested in that, and I could care less, Scott, honestly. All right? If this is my last year being the offensive coordinator at Iowa football, I'm at peace with that. And if we're beating Wisconsin 24-10 with 30 seconds left, you can bet your ass I'll be at peace with that.
I like how Scott slipped in there that they're beating Wisconsin there toward the end of the question. Because at first I was like, wait, are we talking about kicking a sad field goal at the end of a 24-10 loss?
So he was saying to kick a field goal in order to get to the point quota, right?
Right. And it's not a quota. You just have to average it. So if you can score 24
you have to get to
on
a point
Wisconsin,
yeah,
you're probably going to score more than 25 against most of the teams you play. So that's a good sign.
Also, too, I know like Iowa fans were kind of fired up. I mean, honestly, I don't know what the guy could do to win now. Like, what's he supposed to say? What's he going to say?
Yeah.
Is he going to come out there and go, we're going to light it up. We're going to light up the scoreboard like the 4th of July. I think I would probably be like,
McNamara said.
I would be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed if I were him a little bit, right? Like, not just because of the output, but also this contract is a little bit like, it's just embarrassing. I don't know. Like, it's,
well,
how do you answer questions about that?
He was talking about he was talking about why I'm at Iowa. You're at Iowa because your daddy's the head coach. That's why you're the offensive coordinator at Iowa. Like, daddy. Unfortunately, there's no nice way to say that because in any other situation, that person would have already been fired. So I don't want anybody to lose their job. And I feel bad for the guy having to answer these questions at this point. But he's taking the paycheck, and it's a pretty damn big one. So we're going to talk about it.
It's when you get that much money, I guess I would be embarrassed that way too to have the same salary. But it's just like a no-win situation for him. No, but his salary is pretty good.
Yeah, right. It got reduced, but it's still very high. So that's the situation. So we now know there will be no running up the score from the Iowa Hawkeyes next year. Can you imagine? Like, to even get in a position where they could run up the score would be such a victory for them.
I mean, I think you might see running up the score a ton in the early season so that he's not in that position against Wisconsin.
Well,
I would be really open to the idea of it setting up where Iowa has to score 31 points against Wisconsin for him to keep his job. Could you imagine, like, if you go into that game knowing exactly how many points they need to score? It's a rivalry game. That would be so funny, entertaining, compelling.
It would be the Iowa. It would be the Nebraska game. That's
the Nebraska game. Yes.
Because if they got into that game 5-6, because they have to win 7 games, so you have to get yourself bowl eligible there. So you have to win it to get bowl eligible. And then what if they're right on the average? Like, they're averaging 24.9, and if you score 25, it takes you right above. Like, that would be fun. A lot of fun.
Michael Grubbs just said
Nebraska
he would
won
take
that
me
game last
year. Michael Grubbs just said he would take me as the head coach of the Ferentz family. Let me tell you something. I think I can hire a great staff.
I think
it would be entertaining.
A terrible head coach. But you might score more.
Of course
points.
I would be. I guarantee you, though, I'd be the most talked about.
Nah, still Dion, but you'd be second.
No, I think I'd beat him.
You just say the most ridiculous things possible in every press conference.
Can you imagine? Dion doesn't talk to reporters. I would. Can you imagine the sound bites coming out of this mouth?
It would be amazing. It would be. Now, you'd have to stop gambling.
I would.
That would probably be a problem.
Yeah.
You saw what happened to all those NFL players over the weekend.
If I got Kirk's salary, I think I could be okay with that.
Oh, yeah. I just want 1 year of that salary. I always tell people, like, I'd be a terrible AD. I'd be so incompetent. but it'd be awesome for me because I get that salary for like 9 months and then they'd fire me and have to pay me the rest of it.
If you could take one job at a college football program, which one do you think you'd be the best at?
Sports information director.
Oh, I think I would be best at.
I think I'd be somewhat qualified. At least I've dealt with them on the other side.
I think I would be really, really good at the recruiting aspect of it.
Oh yeah,
not the
general
breaking down of the players, but I think like the GM aspect of it. But the GM watched a ton of film. I couldn't go watch an offensive lineman who ranks
you want to set up the visit. You want
and figure out. I want to do the visits. I want to be the person who contacts. I want to be the person who puts out the food. I want to be the first contact of every kid that we decide we're recruiting. I think I'd be good at that.
I like that, and I think you would design a hell of a cookie cake because you. And
I also think I would
in their hotel room for the official visit.
Do a pretty good job of being the person who decides how we allocate our time and where we're going based on our location and like where we would attack and stuff. I think like if I turned it into like, the map of America was behind me in my office and I had all the pins, I think I'd be, and like I was obsessed with it every day of my life. I think I would be pretty good at that. But I'm also arrogant. I can't fathom the idea that I would stink at the job that I criticize people over. So,
and stars mattering it'd be interesting to see if stars still matter to you if you were at a place where you couldn't ever sign a 5-star.
I think I would say exactly how Barton Simmons says it. I think that's exactly how I would act. I say, I know that they are important. And I know that those elite level players are the teams that win you a national championship game. Unfortunately, I'm at a program right now that isn't in that same sphere. So what we have to do is we have to emphasize the evaluation aspect of this to build our program so that one day we can be in the conversation for those prospects that we can't get right now. It's a perfect way to say it.
That's exactly right. All right. We got to go to trivia now. You just came from Trader Joe's, which I believe is still a sponsor for our friends at the Audible, Stu and Bruce. So the category for today is produce. You ready? I feel like this is a good one.
I guess. I wish I just my goal is by the time the football season starts to get one of your trivia questions right. Did I get one right yet?
I
got cheers right. Yeah, I got cheers right.
You got cheers right. So this is a multiple choice question. So at worst, a 25% chance of getting this one right.
Okay.
Which of the following is not botanically classified as a berry? Strawberries, tomatoes, eggplants, or avocados?
All four of those are berries? Or, I mean, all three of the four of those are berries?
One of them is not a berry.
All right, say them again. Sorry. Strawberry is a berry, I hope. Okay.
Strawberries, eggplants, tomatoes, avocados.
I mean, I'm just going to guess eggplant.
The answer is strawberry. All the other ones are berries. Strawberry is actually many.
You're coming in here with a brain buster on me when you know I'm struggling?
Well, I figured if I only mentioned one thing we generally think of as a berry, that you'd realize it was a trick, but you did not.
No, I didn't. No, I'm not smart enough for that. I thought that was like the layup answer that
a berry is a fruit that does not split apart at maturity, and it derives from a single ovary, and the whole wall is fleshy. They're not all tiny, and they're not all sweet, according to CarnegieMuseums.org. The strawberry is actually multiple fruits together embedded in one fleshy package.
What color do all bell peppers start at?
Ooh, that is a good question. Yellow.
Green.
Is it what? The longer you let them stay on the vine,
they change colors the longer.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I got you. I should have known that. We grew jalapenos and they work the same way.
I think that most plants do, but again, I'm not a botanist. Is that the right way to say it?
That would be the right way to say it.
Yeah. I've got so many questions about food that aren't like I know nothing about produce, believe it or not.
I don't think I knew much either. I remember reading that on that same website I'd read. I can't remember what brought it up, but I read it a few days ago and was like, this is incredible trivia right here, because I had no clue that a strawberry wasn't a berry. I had no clue that an avocado was a berry.
Yeah, I didn't know that any of them were berries. I just thought that a strawberry was a berry. Whoever named it should be fired. What common food with the scientific name Malus domestica is also the first name of Gwyneth Paltrow's daughter?
Apple. I could have gotten it with Malus domestica.
I didn't know either of those things.
Malice, yeah.
No clue. What do you mean the malice? What is that? That helps you? How?
That's the Latin name for an apple.
Sorry, I don't know Latin. I grew up in Phoenix.
It's okay. It's okay. Miller Cunningham in the chat asking if we have any draft predictions for Thursday. Miller, you don't need. We're just going to have draft preview shows this week, so you're going to get a lot of those coming up Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday, our friend Bruce Feldman is going to join us that Tuesday for the podcast. We'll record it on Monday, so if you're watching live, it'll be on Monday afternoon, and we'll put out the exact time for you on Twitter. But we're gonna talk draft with Bruce. We're gonna talk his DJ Uiagalelei story, which dropped on Sunday, which is very interesting. A lot to say about Clemson and about his new situation at Oregon State. So we'll talk about that, and then the next day we'll get you ready for the draft, and we are gonna be up late Thursday night recapping round one.
I have
all
a
the fun
date night
that could be had.
A double date night on Thursday night. That starts like at 7:30, so I'll be back for it.
Yeah, so and obviously you guys are all going to be watching the draft, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, we're all going to be watching the draft on my phone. I don't know how you're married. Do you go on double dates a lot? Do you go? I'm just curious.
No.
Do you go on a lot of double dates?
I have no friends. No, we do sometimes.
No, but does your wife have a ton of friends?
Well, here's what happens when your kids get older. Families just all meet up. Or like one time, I don't even know how this came to happen. It was a Friday night, and some neighbor kids were over hanging with our kids, and then a couple friends of ours called and said, "Hey, can our son come hang with your son and the neighbor kid, because they just texted him and said they're hanging out." And we're like, "Yeah." And then they got here and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to dinner." And then they're like, "Why don't you guys come?" And then they texted the parents of the other kids that were at my house, and they're like, "Why don't you guys come too?" And so
we do a lot of that.
We went to the restaurant in the front of the neighborhood, and the grown-ups went out. We called our niece over and we're like, "Hey, watch them," and then we all went out.
What happens a lot in my life is my wife, are you a big planner with like a calendar and all that? Or are you
not
kind
as
of just
good
like
as
take
I should
it?
be?
Yeah, I'm terrible.
I've started to have to use, like with the podcast and all that, I've started to have to use a calendar. Otherwise, you'll run into something that you needed to be at and you're not there.
Yeah, my wife will ask me like April 4th, "Hey, what are you doing in 3 Thursdays from now?"
I don't know.
Like, I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I'm free. And then this happened, and it's like, oh, it's the draft. I'm like terrible at that. It's like, okay, well, we made a commitment with two other people to go out to dinner, and it's always her friends and their husbands that we go out with. And I need to be better about give me 5 minutes. Let me check to make sure. Cause like 99% of the time I'm not doing anything because I've got no friends and no life. But we do have a lot of double dates and like activities that my wife plans far in advance that I accept invitations to before thinking it through. And then if I back out of it, then I'm an asshole. So it's like, there's a lot of pressure here.
She'll help you with this stuff too. We were having breakfast the other day, and there was a little flyer on the table for this restaurant fest that they're having in town. And it's basically, 30 restaurants in town. They all come together. You pay $35 a person and you can eat samples from every place. And sounds like a pretty cool event. And I'm like, we should try that. And my daughter looks at it and goes, April 27th. That's the first day of the NFL draft. I'm like, yep, you're right.
I hope my daughter will be on top of it. Yeah. I'm a big draft guy too. So we'll, I don't know that I have to sit there and watch.
No, you don't.
And listen to Mel Kiper. I like to see. I'll be following along.
Yeah, no, and we may have some friends pop in on that episode as well, because We've done it before where we've live streamed the entire first round. That's 4 hours. You don't need that much of us in your life, I assure you. But we're definitely going to recap it after the first round. We'll have some friends pop in who either covered some of these first round draft picks or just folks who have a lot of takes off the first round of the draft, and it'll be a lot of fun. But Bruce Feldman will join us. If you haven't already read Bruce's mock draft where he talked to all the different college coaches who had a game plan for all these potential first rounders, it is really fun. It's one of the most fun reads he does every spring. So read that. And then his DJ Uiagalelei story is fantastic. So you have your homework.
Pre-draft stuff is more fun than the post-draft stuff, right?
100%. Like,
okay.
we're going to have some ridiculous predictions. I don't love this for CJ Stroud, but this whole CJ Stroud is now dropping thing, which clearly that's some team that wants CJ Stroud to drop to them. He's probably getting picked in the top 5. He'll be fine.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
It's crazy how this stuff just sort of snowballs when there's nothing else to talk about.
Yeah, but I'm excited. This is the closest feeling that we'll get to a game week.
Yes,
in the offseason that we can get to.
So in 2020, because this, April 2020, the pandemic was still very new to us and fresh, and we were all very locked down. And like, I remember the first round of the NFL draft was the first time I felt like, okay, we're going to make it through this thing. Like,
yeah,
we're going to have sports again someday. So it'll be a fun one. But yeah, we're going to talk mostly
going into the draft, Andy, not to cut you off, but going into the draft, it's a college football discussion. We discuss how good these guys played in college and, where they
coming
deserve
out
to be
is
picked
where they,
and all that. And coming out, it's the NFL, and that's out of our range. So, but we'll talk about all of it, and I'm excited about it.
All right, everybody, do your homework or don't. It'll still be fun. We'll talk to you tomorrow.